next speaker, Lucie Viktorová from Palacky University, Olomouc, in fact, the Department of Psychology. And you are going to talk about the digital related research at the Department of Psychology at Palacky. Yeah. So please go ahead, share your slides.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for having me here. I am here actually on behalf of Dr. Klara Seitlová, who is the, I would say, main cooperator within the Aurora Consortium. But as we do quite a lot of research at our department, not everything is really related to the digital society. We were thinking we can give you just a quick brief overview of what we do and maybe how we do it, so that we can discuss it later, or actually tomorrow also during the discussion. So we called our presentation Going Digital, so the research at the Department of Psychology at the Palacky University. And I hope you can see my slides now. Just a quick nod. Yeah, okay, cool. Just so that you have a bit of context, we have quite a lot of research group at the department, and everybody is doing something a bit different. So we have the work in organizational psychology, traffic psychology, educational psychology, clinical psychology, all that stuff. But I think we can find common research topics. So hopefully you'll be able to see that too. And what's also important that each pre-graduate and graduate students at our department writes a research-based thesis. So there are virtually no just theoretical thesis written. So we put a lot of emphasis on the research methods and teaching of research methods and statistics at our department. And it seems like a good way to go. So from the research topics that we did or are still doing and that are connected a bit to the digital world, it's first working with or within semi or fully virtual teams, which got really relevant within the past 2 years, as well as the remote teaching. So I try to focus on the teachers and students' perspective on digital teaching and learning, while nobody was actually used to it before in that scope that we are now. And also we did a research on the possibilities for online psychosocial care. And the thing that emerges from all that are actually quite similar pieces of knowledge, and I hope there will be visible by the end of the presentation. So to go straight ahead to the virtual teamwork, which was actually the work of Dr. Seitlová, done together with the Department of Applied Economics. So this was quite similar. What they do is quite similar to the behavioral economic games like we have just heard about. But this research was about or done within a teaching program designed to foster virtual communication skills. So it was the 1 semester long subject for cross-border virtual teams for Czech students and for Polish students. So there were 28 students taking part in there, and their task was to develop a business plan for a company they could start. And they had several meetings online, which were moderated by the teachers. And then they were also asked to meet, well, not in private, but on their own terms. But all of that was conducted virtually. And they were observed by the teachers, who were also the moderators and the researchers. And some findings that came from this, I wouldn't call it experiment, but actually the course, was that first, the clear instructions are not always clear. So even if everybody nods at the beginning that they understand, it doesn't mean that they are going to do what you wanted them to do. So what we found out is that when working in virtual teams, you really need to have a full session on clearing the possible questions and answers and really rephrasing what everybody is supposed to do, because otherwise it stays unclear and you only find out by the end, which isn't really desirable. And preferably not to have this just at the beginning, but also some halfway through when the people are already working on a task, so they stay on the right path. The other thing was that the technical equipment might be a problem. This is something we have seen across all our research done with the digital environment, because not everybody still has a good webcam, microphone. They might not know how to use it, especially if you're using different platforms. So everything has to be tested beforehand, just before the start of the experiment, before the starting of the lectures. Whatever. And I think people tend to forget that the more they are themselves used to using ICT, but really just to make clear that everyone knows what to use and how to use it seems to be quite crucial so that everything works. And also what we found out that when even when you should assure that everybody has the language proficiency level, for example, they are supposed to supply an FCE certificate or stuff like that. Even if the students do have that, it doesn't mean that they are able to communicate in that language at the level you are expecting them to, which might then pose a bit of a barrier within the communication. So when we're going to develop another online teaching program, they really should be at least a subject on intensive language training, because really not everybody who has a certificate is on that communication skill level, sometimes needed for real teamwork or especially virtual teamwork. In that case, also the Google Translate comes really in handy. So it's a good thing that they've get along with that. But what we found out, even despite these barriers, the creativity itself was not hindered, and the different background of the students, meaning the Czech and Polish culture, was actually of an advantage. So virtual teams can work even across the borders. There are just some things to watch out for when conducting such collaboration. And one more thing that Dr. Seitlová wanted me to stress out was the within the stages of the group forming, which you might probably be familiar with. When it comes to virtual teams and virtual groups, there is a crucial stage of ICT and norming in terms of ICT use. Because as I've mentioned before, it's not just that people might not have the physical equipment, but they might not be familiar with the use, or they might each want to use a different platform. For example, some would like to use, I don't know, Dropbox, others would like to use Google Disk. So this splittering is not really an ideal thing to do within a virtual team. So there should be an explicit stage focused on the technology, what to use, how to use it, and when to use it, because otherwise you can have like spam email communications when for something that could have been done within a chat. So more useful for a synchronous communication and stuff like that. So this is probably something to keep in mind when designing maybe a teaching course that should be virtual. So we wanted to stress that. And it actually goes nice with the other topics I'd like to present. This is the remote teaching, which is, there are topics of engaging students and teacher-students relationship, but it's really ongoing right now. So far, I only have like anecdotal evidence, but it's very similar to the research done by Dr. Seitlová with the virtual teams. So what I'm basing these findings on is my in-class discussions with my undergraduate students of educational psychology, and then anonymous survey among our students, and faculty meetings and online survey among our soon-to-be graduates. And all of those people were discussing the advantages and disadvantages of online or remote teaching, or the problems they might have, and tips for improvement. And again, the findings from all those discussions was that there is a huge role of communication and trust going on within the virtual environment, because it seems to be a bit different still to the face-to-face teaching and learning, for example, or especially in the case of online exams, because it it's kind of like an arms race. At one hand, you have the teachers who would like their exams when they're online tests or whatever, be like foolproof and cheating proof. But on the other hand, there are students who might feel that they are being distrusted or called cheaters. And so we try to come up with measures to prevent cheating. And on the other hand, it's impossible to prevent cheating because students come up with ways how to bypass our measures. And if they are honest, they feel really, well, disencouraged by those measures. So they're feeling like under a lot of pressure, and they generally do not like that kind of pressure. So I would say, ongoing hypothesis is that within the online teaching or remote teaching, the first task or purpose should be to establish mutual trust and trustful relationships. And this could be only done with open and frequent communication, or through open and frequent communication. And then maybe some of those glitches might be prevented, and we won't feel that much of a need to prevent every possibility for cheating, and the students won't feel so much pressure or so much distrust from our side. So that was kind of interesting. The other thing is, which you probably also know, students like engagement, prompt feedback, and a lot of additional sources available as their study materials. And this might seem quite straightforward, but still I've encountered situations where either one of these wasn't really working, or there wasn't a understanding among the side of the students and the teachers as to what is expected or meant by, you know, for example, sources and stuff like that. So, but this is something that's really good to have. For example, even if you have online lectures, so it's not just you talking, but actually engaging the students through, I don't know, activities, breakout rooms, simple surveys and stuff like that. So really worked well. And yeah, when it came to the final state exams, which were usually held oral, face-to-face at our department, the majority of students have preferred to have them face-to-face and like in person, because it seems that with the final state exams, there is a aspect of a transition ritual, so to say. So you really want to meet the people, see your teachers in person, and kind of, you know, say goodbye. And it's kind of a cultural event, I would say. So doing this online seemed, well, it was necessary because we couldn't have done it in person, but it was kind of missing something. And this was really perceived by the students as well as by the teachers. So just as an interesting point, that people might, you know, have also other considerations when it comes to online exams than just the difficulty level and technical problems and stuff like that. They might also place an emphasis on the human side of teaching, maybe, and all of that. So that's good to know. And finally, the online psychosocial care, which seems to be quite distant from all that. We try to ask our practitioners, like our graduates, as to how did they do their job as psychologists during the COVID restriction times. So we asked them about the advantages and perceived obstacles in online psychosocial work. And we collected the data through, it's not 2000, yeah, last year and a half. So we did an online survey, we did numerous focus groups and individual interviews with our graduates or people working within the healthcare system, within the social services, and within the school systems, because each of the system might have different specifics. And we asked specifically about diagnostics, therapy, and counseling for children, but also for adults. And again, some of the findings which are quite similar to virtual teamwork and virtual teaching is that there might be a problem in performing some tasks online. For example, well, in our case, it was the diagnostics using psychodiagnostic methods online. There were quite a lot of concerns about it, not just due to data privacy, but also because of the validity of the results, because you never really know who's sitting at the other end of the computer, especially if they do not have the microphone and the camera and all the technical equipment. And also the psychodiagnostic methods were not always designed to be administered online. So you have some material with which you actually should have like physical contact with, and this was impossible to do online. So that was quite interesting to see what the practitioners think about that. And also they were really discussing the client types or maybe diagnosis types and their suitability for distant care. So we were talking a lot about people for whom distant psychosocial care, for example, therapy or counseling, was quite all right and really, really suitable. And the groups that might have not felt comfortable in doing that. And there were quite a lot of different opinions depending on where the people worked and with whom the people worked. But basically, what we found out is that, or actually I have a slide for that, so I'm just going to skip there. But there might be people who just in general wouldn't like distant contact, whereas others would prefer that even above the face-to-face contact, maybe because of social anxiety. But one of the problems we are still dealing with is the informed consent and other administrative and technical requirements. Again, not a perfect situation. So if you were interested in some of the most frequent obstacles in psychosocial work online or remotely, as named by our respondents, again, the absence or poor quality of technical equipment was one of the most dominating, but also the lack of privacy and interference from others was an issue, because if you come to a psychologist's office, you are alone in there and nobody disturbing you because the door is closed. But if you are conducting this from your own home, there might be your family members coming around. You never know who comes to your room, especially if you're a kid. So this, well, I wouldn't say threat, but obstacle was quite, prevalent among our respondents. And again, there was this feeling of impersonal impersonality of the encounter, so that it's not just the same as if you see people face to face. So what I wanted to show by all this is that when you go digital, and no matter if you mean like teamwork and group work in a business setting or teaching setting, or even psychosocial care, so like individual work setting with psychological aspects, first of all, you have to ensure that technical equipment at all sides, and that everybody knows what to do and how to do it. You shouldn't forget about the people and their relationships, so-called human side, because they really place an emphasis on that, and it might be hindered due to the remote nature of online teaching, work, etc. And that both quantitative as well as qualitative research are important, because you can't always get all the answers from just surveys. So conducting discussions with people might be quite interesting and might bring really interesting results. And just, you know, engage people because they feel disengaged as it is by just sitting in front of the computer. So coming up with tasks which they can really perform and do and cooperate with others and communicate with others might be really encouraging for their general engagement, for example, in the program or subject, etc. So that was it. Sorry for my rapid speech, but I tried to catch up with the time. And any questions you might have, here it comes. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, Lucie, thank you for your talk, and the floor is open to questions. Okay, then I will start myself. One of the topics you talked about was remote teaching, which is a very hot topic in universities these days. And you were also talking about online exams, and we have all to deal with that. There are universities, many universities that got into very heavy forms of what they call proctoring. Basically, like we have surveillance capitalism, surveillance states, we also have surveillance universities. And then basically, universities are telling students that they assume that they are going to be fraudsters, and that students basically are evil, and that they will be prevented by doing evil, for doing evil. So that is the impression proctoring system give. And actually they have students went to court for that. But the question then is, what do you think are alternatives that work? So you mentioned oral exams. That was in the old days with few students very well possible, but that doesn't scale up really if you have a class of 300 people. So from your psychology and care background, could you say something about that?
Yeah, I think there is not a simple answer to that, because as you mentioned, people going to court and feeling really like being accused of being cheaters beforehand, before they even try to do something. On the other hand, you have students, we had students, or they were actually applicants to our university, asking us, well, and what are you going to do about other people might like cheating, other people's possibility of cheating? It's like, I'm not doing that, but I don't want others to cheat. So what are you going to do about that? And so you can't have it both ways, actually. And I completely agree. Doing oral exams, if you have hundreds of students within your class, it's really it's not possible, and it's really not practical, even if you had like 5 students at a time and they're kind of like colloquial exams. So I was thinking a lot about that, and I think, well, or at least this is my hypothesis. First of all, there will be students who are going to try to cheat no matter what you do, because their motives might be quite different. They might place high emphasis on good grades maybe, or they might be dependent on a stipend, which again is dependent on their grades. So you won't be able to prevent cheating like 100%. I think what you can do is just discuss through the semester the actually your motives and what you would like the students to learn. So kind of have a discussion about also their motives for learning, and kind of make clear that cheating is actually cheating themselves at this point, because they chose to study the field they chose, probably because they liked it and were interested in it, and now they're just, I think it's an internal mechanism learned within high school and elementary school that kicks in, so to maximize winnings by the minimal input, so to say. So having an open discussion about that might work, I think, at least to an extent. There are also some discussions about discussing ethics and kind of an honor pledge signing. But ultimately, if you'd like to do online exams, maybe don't just rely on multiple choice questions. They were the suggestions to design like higher order thinking skills, or maybe just allowing for open book exams, which I find quite harder to design, to be honest, because for me, they are quite harder to grade then, because it's like kind of grading the creativity, and how can you then defend yourself in front of the students, which is also an issue in here, why you gave them like 5 points for their solutions and their classmate only got 4 points when both of them were right. And it's really, so there's no ideal way how to answer that. But simple multiple choice questions is, well, not the answer, because they will find a way around it quickly. That's about it.
Thank you very much. Other questions? One final question.
Do you hear me?
A bit?
Okay. Maybe I can continue the same question.
Okay.
So there's a continuum between
Sorry, I can't hear you now, really.
you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. But I continue the same question. There's a continuum between making cheating impossible at one extreme and allowing anything that goes on the other hand. And it's impossible to completely prevent cheating, so we have to be somewhere in the middle. What do you think? Is it enough and helpful to implement means that raise the mental bar to cheating? Because, for example, at my university, they encourage requiring that students turn on their laptop camera during online exams, and then those who run the exam have the possibility to turn on or to look at them and see if they're doing something illegal. Whereas my perception on this would be they just see their face, they cannot see anything at all. People can do on their screen whatever they want. There's no way to check that. But it is argued that this very camera discourages students from cheating. Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, I do actually. I have the experience from myself and my colleagues. First of all, my colleagues said that they can't monitor more than like 5 up to 10 students at one time with the cameras. And if you have this, depending on the software you're using, you can only have one person sharing their screen if you want to monitor that as well. So it's still very time consuming to do it with all your students. Second of all, even if you ask them to show you the room, which some of them might be uncomfortable with because, well, whatever, and I don't blame them, there are still, I mean, I heard ridiculous stories about people having like cheat sheets just on the edge of their screen so it's not visible, or people hiding under their desks and stuff like really crazy stories. But yeah, there's always a way around that. But what I want to say, maybe a solution would be not placing so much emphasis on a one final exam, but actually doing, for example, group projects or like multiple, tasks throughout the semester for which their students are awarded points and which are actually linked to the skills and knowledge they should be achieving, so that the final exam wouldn't have like a 50% value of their overall grade, but just like 10 or 20%. And then they might be, not so motivated to cheat on that because the majority goes actually elsewhere. The majority of work goes elsewhere. So they would still have to be engaged with the subjects and the knowledge before that, which actually I think it's the better way than just, trying to come up with foolproof exams, just to engage the students differently and let them gain the skills or prove they've got the skills, not just on one final exam.
But that requires design of different types of education as well as evaluation. That's the implication. Okay, Lucie, thank you very much. We have a break of about 10 minutes, and at 11:30 we continue with the talk by Giuliano Tamburini. See you later on.